Slow news day, huh? The Oklahoma City Thunder announced plenty of roster moves, and most importantly, Chet Holmgren is returning to the Thunder lineup on Friday. What does it all mean? We'll break it all down on Locked On Thunder.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, brought to you by Game Time, we're diving into the Thunder seeing Chet Holmgren return. Ajay Mitchell is now signed to a standard contract. Daniel Theis has been waived. Brendan Carlson has been signed. The trade deadline wrapped up. So much going on this Friday edition of Locked On Thunder. Today's episode, of course, brought to you by Game Time. Go download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Well, the biggest news happened this morning whenever the Thunder removed Chet Holmgren from their injury report, signaling his return here on Friday inside the Paycom Center against the Toronto Raptors, which again, might be time to use our good friends over at Game Time. And so Chet Holmgren is back. And first and foremost, the fact that Chet Holmgren is going to play basketball on February 7th inside the Paycom Center before the All-Star break is extremely impressive. And I think it's a testament to the work he's put in, the rehab process, and the organization's ability to get him back to this point. Because whenever he splattered on the court and fractured his hip back on November 10th, I can't find you a single person who would have predicted that he'd be back pre-All-Star break. And it just shows that, he was on track the entire time in this rehab process. He attacked the rehab process, and he comes back around the window, right? Like we all expected, hey, after the All-Star break, pretty quickly after, maybe March, but February 7th, I think is a bit jarring, and jarring in a good way for what Chet Holmgren has gone through. And I think that it's the perfect time. I think that this is the perfect time to bring Chet Holmgren back because the way the schedule lays out here, you have 5 more games before the All-Star break. And then that All-Star break gives you 7 days off for a mini training camp. So there's plenty of questions that come out with Chet being back, and we're going to dive into them all. But with the All-Star break coming here in a couple of weeks, it allows you to go collect data tonight, to go collect data in the next game, and then go collect data at the game after that, and see where's Chet at individually, where's the fit at with Chet and his teammates, and whatever comes from it, right? Whether it's an incredible stretch here or a rusty stretch or whatever comes from it, you can address that at the All-Star break and what really will be a mini training camp period, which is exactly what Chet Holmgren will need, I think. So it really comes at a perfect time. And now it begs the question, what will Chet Holmgren look like on the court tonight? So the first question that we won't get the answer to until Saturday will be, is Chet Holmgren going to play back-to-backs? Because I'm dying to see this Oklahoma City-Memphis matchup. I'm not going to say that Memphis is better than the Thunder. I don't believe that. I do believe that Memphis can create some matchup advantages to where they can play the Thunder extremely tough if both teams are healthy. But we haven't seen both teams play healthy yet. Perhaps those perceived advantages that can create a closer gap between these two teams aren't actually there. So I'm dying to see these two teams play healthy. But I will say, off of a hip fracture, it appears from the outside looking in, and I'm no doctor, but it just appears that like putting him in a situation where he's playing a back-to-back, it might be a bit premature for a second game back from this injury. So we'll see. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Then the next question, is Chet Holmgren going to have any sort of minute restriction? This I think is very fair to ask because, on one hand, you can be flippant, right? Like if you're someone who's really locked into Locked On Thunder, and I'm giving you the information and you're doing the information yourself, and you see that every time they bring a guy back, they don't really dabble in the whole minute restriction thing, right? Like Mark's big quote every pregame whenever somebody comes back is, if they're active, they're live. And like, meaning that like, hey, if we said that they're healthy enough to play, they're going to play. And that's all true. And the history suggests that the Thunder will not have a minute restriction for Chet Holmgren because of that very fact of the precedent that Mark has set for injured players. However, this is a totally unique circumstances. Not only is this your second best player, not only is this an injury where he's been away for a while, like off the court since November 10th, but a hip fracture, like you especially don't want to mess around with anything like that, right? Like when you hurt your finger, for example, like Ousmane Dieng did, you can do almost everything in the world with a hurt finger except play NBA basketball. So there's a different kind of clearance of like, okay, when that finger heals, you're back. You're just right, ready to go the same way you would have been pre-injury. Is that the case for Chet? We just don't know yet, and I don't think that we're going to know until the game unfolds, because no matter if he does or doesn't have a restriction, I think that they're probably going to stick with that same messaging. And so it's going to be up to us to be due diligent and monitor what the minutes look like. But I will say, typically, I'm with you. Those of you that are in the camp of like, well, they never have minute restrictions. They've also never had a hip fracture, right? They've also never had this situation happen to one of their top guys. So we'll see where they all fall on that aspect of things. Then the next question becomes, who starts? And I want to say on the front end, your best 5 players that are active tonight is going to be SGA, Lou Dort, J-Dub, Chet Holmgren, and Isaiah Hartenstein. That's your best 5 players. And if you want to start your best 5, I totally get that. If I was going to predict who starts, though, I would actually predict that the Thunder will start Shai, Lou, one of Wiggins or Joe, probably Wiggins, Dub, and then Chet. Just because, you want everything about the game to be comfortable for Chet Holmgren. You want to make it as comfortable and normal as possible in these first few minutes of action to get his rhythm back, to get his feet wet, whatever cliche you want to use. You want this to be status quo for Chet Holmgren as much as it can be status quo for a guy who has not played since November 10th and a guy who's been nursing a hip injury. So I could really see them starting that lineup, and people will rush to like freak out or question mark about it. But I really think that could be more so about Chet than anything else. Because I will grant you the best 5 players are SGA, Lou, Dub, Chet, and Hartenstein. And I'm really curious to see where Mark falls on that philosophy of do you want to just his first minute of NBA action in months be a unique lineup, or do you want it to be something he's more familiar with? Now we get to what to watch for. Well, first of all, if Chet Holmgren does not start, then you're looking at something completely different. But let's just say that, I'm sorry, if both bigs do start, the thing you're watching for is how are they staggering those 2 bigs? Who comes off the floor first? Who gets re-entered into the game? And with who? Right? Because it's very clear, Shai will play the whole first quarter. That's what Shai does. He'll play the whole first quarter, play the whole third quarter, play half of the second and fourth quarters. So who's going to be the big that they want playing with J-Dub? And no matter who starts, who sits, or if they both start, that's going to be the biggest question. How do they think that they can maximize the lead guard? Because we all have theories, right? Like I personally think that Chet Holmgren maximizes J-Dub more than Hartenstein. No knock on Hartenstein. Hartenstein's been excellent. No matter who he's played with, whenever he's on the floor, he helps the Thunder on both ends. But the style of play from Chet Holmgren, where it's more pick and pop, and he's more of a threat from 3, that helps that helps J-Dub get to his spots more in the mid-range. That helps J-Dub get to the rim more. That helps J-Dub initiate offense. Whereas with Hartenstein, yes, he can lay that brick wall screen and gain you momentary separation, but whenever he has to go to the rim and he's no threat to shoot and his big doesn't respect his prowess past the elbow, well then J-Dub has that moment of separation. Defenses can easily recover from that, though, because the big can step to J-Dub. You don't really care about Hartenstein in that circumstance. And as long as you have a capable point of attack defender who can get over that screen quick enough, then it really does bog down J-Dub's offensive possessions, which I think has impacted a little bit of how J-Dub's offensive season has been viewed to this point of the year. So I am very curious to see, whenever it's just one of Shai and J-Dub on the court, who is the big that is tied to them? And does it stay consistent? Is it like, hey, when J-Dub's on the floor, so is Chet, and when Shai's on the floor, so is Hartenstein? Or is it fluid? Do they each get a little bit of both of the two bigs? Like, that is, I think, the most important thing to watch from a basketball standpoint. And then from a Chet standpoint, the most important things to watch is, how does he attack the rim on both ends? Like, is he still just eager to go flying through the air for a block? Is he still able to quickly roll to the rim? And even before the injury this season, he'd been really good off the bounce getting to the rim. Is he still attacking the rim hard? How is he moving around out there? Does his jump shot look any different? Right? Like, to me, in this game, you're not going to doubt Chet Holmgren's ability, because he's somebody who's proven time and time again that he is a unique player. He is a potentially all-star, all-NBA type of player. Like that, what we've seen from him in the NBA level, which is a small sample size still, it's only 92 games. What we've seen from him at the NBA level shows that potential. So I'm not going to doubt that he can just return to this game and have a loud box score. But no matter if the box score is loud in a good way, a bad way, or an indifferent way, the most important thing to watch tonight for Chet, I think, is the process of what is he doing? What is he trying to do? Doesn't matter if the shot goes in or out. Is he still confident when he gets the ball, passed out to him on the pick and pop? Like, what does that stuff physically look like for Chet, more so than what's the end result of that play? And I cannot wait to recap this game and break it all down for you here on Locked On Thunder. Coming up, the Thunder made plenty of roster moves on the trade deadline day. What were they? How does it affect the team? How does it affect the future for Oklahoma City? But first, I want to say right now, my good friends over at Robinhood Gold, check out Robinhood today, folks. Today. Because with Robinhood Gold, you can enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privilege of the very high net worth is no longer exclusive to them. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted to 3%, and you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on your annual IRA contributions, sign up today at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rates subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 per month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average saving account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. The Thunder also made some roster moves by waiving Daniel Theis. This was expected. We talked about this on yesterday's show when breaking down the Suns game and breaking down the trade. The Thunder made this trade as a make good with New Orleans, right? Like, New Orleans wanted to dodge the luxury tax. They sent Daniel Theis and a second-round pick to Oklahoma City. The Thunder sent cash considerations, which is as good as me sending you a penny. And they pick up a second-round pick and waive Daniel Theis. And so the way I would just explain it to you is that on Tuesday, the Thunder had an open roster spot and did not have an extra second-round pick. Today, the Thunder have an open roster spot after waiving Daniel Theis and are up a second-round pick. That's the whole point of that trade. Now, with that open roster spot, they also did what we expected them to do. They didn't zag and they weren't unpredictable. They just converted Ajay Mitchell into that roster spot. The rookie point guard who we all knew deserved a standard contract, who we all saw play in Mark's rotation from the word go this season, is now postseason eligible. It's a 2-year deal worth $6 million. And that year mark has hit people kind of funny of why is it only 2 years. I will say, in all likelihood, there are some mechanisms in there that make it way easier to re-sign Ajay Mitchell. So, for example, I would imagine that the second year of this 2-year deal is a team option, which they can just go ahead and decline. which, like, again, why would you decline the option? Well, it would make AJ Mitchell a restricted free agent. You can then work in the summertime and work out a longer term deal than just the two. So he's going to be here a while. Let's just say that he's going to be here a while. Don't let the numbers for the meantime, deflect from the fact that they found the hidden gem in the second round and that he's going to be in Bricktown for quite a while. And he's going to be somebody that you look back on and talk about how important that pick was, because you're going to see really soon, as you pay SGA, as you pay JW, as you pay Chet Holmgren, you're going to see very soon just how important all these second round picks that you're compiling, all these second round prospects that you're landing on and hitting on, like an AJ Mitchell and an Aaron Wiggins and an Isaiah Joe off the scrap heap and a Lou Dort undrafted. You're going to see how all these guys become immensely more valuable under the new CBA. And so AJ Mitchell will be in Oklahoma City for a long time. Now, again, AJ Mitchell is still hurt. He's out for 10 to 12 weeks. We'll see what that looks like what day he officially returns on, because I will say it's a little bit tough from my standpoint to envision like throwing a rookie out there in the postseason that's not played since January. But hopefully they get him back earlier than the postseason, the 10 to 12 week mark. And then you can just see him get acclimated again at the end of the regular season and go from there. We'll see what the exact timeline looks like and what 10 to 12 weeks looks like for AJ Mitchell. But the bottom line is, before the injury, he really stepped up to the plate. He really showed you that he's that secondary creator, that second unit ball handler and initiator that the Thunder need and that the Thunder have lacked for a couple seasons now, while also being able to hit catch and shoot threes, while also being able to be a really good defender and a very versatile defender and fitting the Thunder's identity. So he checks a lot of boxes for the Thunder. Like do not forget how good AJ Mitchell is. With this team being 40-9 and winning without him, don't forget how valuable this guy is whenever he gets back to being healthy. So with AJ Mitchell getting a standard contract, Brandon Carlson gets his open two-way deal he leaves behind. This is Brandon Carlson's fourth time signing contracts with Oklahoma City this year. So whenever they were earlier in the year, remember they were cycling through the last roster spot because they wanted to keep it open for the trade deadline to do the Theis trade, like we said on this podcast from the beginning of the year of why they had that spot open. They did exactly that, right? They did the Theis trade, did exactly that. But if you remember, it was Alex Reese, and then it was Malachi Leones, and then it was Brandon Carlson. And Brandon Carlson stuck around longer than any of the other ones did. Any of Leones or Reese did. And it was because how impressed the organization was, especially with the blue and that practice and things you don't see. They were impressed with how he picked up the playbook. They're impressed with his work ethic. They're impressed with his basketball IQ. All that stuff is what popped off the page to them. They did waive him after that initial contract before his contract became guaranteed. And the reason being is, they, again, wanted that open roster spot for the Theis trade that came to be. And you don't want to guarantee his contract because you knew at the end of the day you needed AJ Mitchell on a standard contract, and there's just no point to throw away that money, because when they first signed Brandon Carlson to the initial contract, 10-day deals were not eligible yet. So once they waived him, they brought him right back on a 10-day deal. Then another 10-day deal. So that's 3 contracts, and now the fourth one is his two-way deal, which a two-way deal is those 3 slots that you can go back and forth from the Blue and the Thunder, but you cannot play in the postseason. So Brandon Carlson is not eligible for postseason play whatsoever. I will say, why does this still matter? Brandon Carlson can really help the Blue, and the Blue have a lot of home games coming up where you would imagine that they're going to be shuffling down guys they care about to play with the Blue, like a Dylan Jones, who they care about his development. And it's good to have good players around them to help their development, and that's what Carlson can do. But also, we just in the first segment went through Chet Holmgren and all the question marks around him. Minute restriction, back-to-backs, all those questions Brandon Carlson can help you with no matter what the answer is. So yes, he can still play in blowouts, because if you are fully healthy and a full go, you're going to blow a lot of teams out, because you blew a lot of teams out anyway. But if there's a game where Chet needs a night off for injury management or whatever that looks like, there's going to be matchups where you'd rather play Carlson than Jay will. Or you just rather would have Carlson helping you in those games. So I think it's an amazing job by the Thunder to get that done and get all this done in short order. I mean, it was boom, 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 rat-a-tat-tat for the Thunder today in terms of its roster dealings. And I believe the 18-man roster is set. I think that this is your roster for the rest of the year. Of course, Flagler, Dukas, and Carlson not going to be eligible for the playoffs. And then the rest is history with the top 15. There was more news, of course, because the NBA trade deadline happened. The carnage has cleared from the deadline. Where does things stand in the NBA? Plus, we had the NBA All-Star Draft, which was as perplexing as you'd imagine. Talking about that coming up. But first, I want to say right now, our good friends over at Game Time, go check out Game Time today, because if you're looking for tickets to the next big event like Chet Holmgren's return to the hardwood in Oklahoma City, or concerts, comedy shows, or movies, you can go check it out at Game Time, because Game Time has the right ticket at the right price, and they can really help you avoid the headache of buying tickets. So with Game Time picks, it's never been easier to let them pick out the right picks for you. Let me tell you about it. With Game Time picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of little dots on a seating map to find the best ticket listings for you. The curating deals helps you find the super simple but great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through those options. I recently saw a super deal where you could get into this Raptors game at a very low cost on a premium seat. You can go check it out there at the Game Time app. And then the feature of seeing it from your seat, the view from your seat, is a huge game changer, especially if you're just rushing into town today, haven't really ever been to a Thunder game. You want to see the sight lines at your seat. You can see that before you even hit buy. And the best part is, from my vantage point, I love the all-in pricing. You toggle it on and you see the exact cost up front. And I'll tell you another thing about Game Time. They're so confident that you will not find a lower price. They have a lower price guarantee. Because if you somehow find the better deal somewhere else, which you will not, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Go download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create your account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase by downloading the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. What time is it? It's game time. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. There was an all-star draft. Like, that's a thing that did happen today on TNT, for better or worse. The Inside the NBA crew went ahead and drafted the pool of all-stars, because if you didn't know, the All-Star Game will now feature 3 teams of NBA All-Stars, and then the Rising Stars winner. Those 4 teams will compete in a bracket, in a tournament, to then crown the winner of the All-Star Game, playing to 40 points each game. Anyway, somehow in the world, SGA went pick 8 in this draft. He lands on Team Chuck. J-Dub went to Team Kenny. And so here's your rosters. Charles Barkley had Jokic, Antetokounmpo, and SGA as his top 3 picks, with Wemby, Pascal Siakam, Alperen Sengun, Karl Anthony Towns, and Donovan Mitchell. Team Kenny selected Anthony Edwards first overall, Jalen Brunson, Jaren Jackson Jr., J-Dub, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Cade Cunningham, and Tyler Hero. And Team Shaq has LeBron, Steph, AD, Tatum, KD, Lillard, James Harden, and Jaylen Brown. If Cason Wallace wins the Rising Stars, he could compete against his Thunder teammates. Shai and J-Dub, of course, are on separate teams. And then they're all going to be coached by, so Mark and a Thunder assistant, they each get a team. And then Kenny Atkinson and a Cavs assistant, they each get a team. So the 4 teams will be made up by those coaches, Mark, Kenny, and then 2 assistant coaches, one from OKC, one from Cleveland. Fun little wrinkle to the All-Star Game. It's interesting that you'll see Shai and J-Dub go up against one another. Shai was already asked about that, and Shai said that he's not going to let J-Dub score on him. So that could be a fun matchup if we get to see those 2 teams meet in the bracket play. The NBA trade deadline cleared out the carnage. Luka is in LA. AD is in Dallas. Jimmy Butler is in Golden State. Brandon Ingram is in Toronto, who's in town today. I don't think that they're going to play their new guys, which could spell trouble for Toronto, because they have like 8 guys listed as out today with a trade pending and everything. So how that gets cleared up could mean that the lowly Raptors are also a short-handed Raptors squad, which is not great going up against this Thunder team that's getting healthy. But the biggest win for the Thunder in the trade deadline, and we're going to break down with our friends that pop on the pod. We'll break down like how the Thunder will fare against this new look conference. Sure. The biggest win, though, Cam Johnson did not get traded. The reports from the New York Post were correct. That's a massive win for the Thunder. Because as we mentioned on yesterday's pod, this Thunder team earned the right to continuity. This Thunder team earned the right to give themselves another chance. Now, I'm not going to promise you that's going to work because there are questions. Like, are we sure that Aaron Wiggins can hit big-time threes in the playoffs? Are we sure that Caruso and Wallace and Dort and these guys, these complementary pieces, are going to be able to knock down those shots next to Shai? I'm not just absolutely positive about that fact, because the last time we saw this regime of role players play in the postseason, they weren't good. They were not good offensively. But you have to acknowledge that was their first ever attempt. And to act like these guys can't get better in their second go-around is insane to me. And the fact that they've gotten themselves to 40-9 right there should tell you that something's different. Something's changed because they've done it through the means of adversity. They've done it with all these injuries that you complain about every single day on this show, in the comments, everywhere. You talk about the Thunder, you have to talk about their injuries. And they've been able to withstand it to the point that they have doubled up the old adage, like the old adage of winning 40 before you lose 20. They won 40 before they lost 10. And they have not had a semblance of their real roster. Like, you think about who the top 8 guys will be when this team is in the postseason. Of those top 8, the majority of them have dealt with injuries that have held them out multiple games. The majority of them have dealt with injuries that have been what you could deem long-term. And yet, here they sit. But again, I'm not going to just tell you it's all going to be okay and that this is the year for Wiggins to hit big shots. I think he can do it. I think Joe can do it. I've talked about Isaiah Joe almost every single pod. I think that what they're doing with him in terms of the actions that they're getting him threes is way more conducive to playoff success. Because again, the last season, they were kind of resting on their laurels of we're so good, Shai's so good in particular, that he's going to get all the attention in the regular season. You're going to collapse on him in the paint, and you're just going to be too laissez-faire to go close out whenever he sprays the ball outside. So it was very stationary catch and shoot. And this year, they're moving Isaiah Joe around. They're putting him in different spots, and he himself has talked about trying to get comfortable with that new system. And since January started, he's been electrifying from beyond the arc. And that's the kind of stuff that you can repeat in the postseason, because in the postseason, teams are no longer laissez-faire. They're no longer drinking decaf coffee, not even bothering to close out. They're all hopped up on caffeine, and they're all flying out, and they're all playing together and playing tight on a string defensively, and they're doing both. They're closing in on Shai and collapsing the paint. They're also flying back out and taking away threes. And you've got to be ready to hit those shots on very tight windows. The guys were not ready to do that last year for the Thunder. They might be ready to do it this year. But if they're not ready to do it this year, okay, let's just say what if? What if they're not ready? The fact that Cam Johnson still sits there in Brooklyn is a massive win. Because if you get that data point again of what unraveled this team in the playoffs was their role players in the shooting. Cam Johnson, line 1, the second the season ends. Just like you shipped out Josh Giddey the second the season ended and got Alex Caruso. Like, there's this idea that Sam Presti doesn't go for it. Like, what do you call this summer? What do you call this summer? He traded the 6th overall pick for Alex Caruso. He went and signed Isaiah Hartenstein to the biggest contract in club history. And again, the Hartenstein example is such a good one, because if you go back and read the comments from the trade deadline podcast last year, where we recapped the trade deadline, people were ripping him a new one of how could you not go get a center? How could you not go get a big? How could you not go do this? How could you not go trade Josh Giddey? And yet he got premium value for not doing that. Like nobody would have thought that Josh Giddey was worth Alex Caruso, and he did it. Nobody would have thought that the Thunder would land Isaiah Hartenstein, like, honest and truly, because they've never landed a free agent like that before. And he did it. Isaiah Hartenstein is the better basketball player individually, and especially the better basketball player for this Thunder roster than anyone he could have traded for last deadline. And so the patience paid off. And in the meantime, You got to collect more information to continue to strategically build this roster. It's the same thing with Cam Johnson. The fact that he's still out there for you with Brooklyn, and that if you believe he's the right move, and I told you before the deadline, I would have made the move. I would have went and got Cam Johnson. If the playoffs end and you still think this team's a Cam Johnson away, you're still going to have the assets. You're still going to have the ability, and you have a GM who's shown you he'll go do something. He'll go fix something. He'll go improve something. But if Cam would have been traded away to a contender somewhere, they're not going to trade him to Oklahoma City. Brooklyn will, though. So it's a good thing, in my vantage point, that Brooklyn held on to Cam Johnson. Another podcast down, but plenty more to go this week. We still have the Raptors recap on Saturday. We still have the recap of the Grizzlies game on Sunday. And we're back on Monday for 5 more days a week. So plenty of Locked On Thunder coming your way. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast from, including on YouTube and Spotify and Apple. Leave a review, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.